Well, for the past 5 years, uh, many experts around the world talked about the New World Order and its impact on the trade and currencies of the nations and the domination of the world. What I'm going to talk about in this podcast is the unique perspective of what the New World Order can do to the intellectual property and the methodology of accounting the intellectual property. How much drastic change could happen and will happen, right? It's just a scale of the economics that's going to change, but there's definitely going to be a major tilt. By the way, if you're here for the first time, I'm Maya Kannan. I'm a geoeconomic strategist. I help institutions, organizations, non-profits, large organizations, governments, economic zones in terms of helping them to strategize the geoeconomics of the region in terms of increasing the GDP and coming with a line of products and solutions that would expand the economy of the to a scale where there's going to be a greater impact. So, coming to the topic, intellectual property and the New World Order, right? So, we've been talking about this New World Order and the scale of economies, tilting for for a few years now, and that is already happening. We are witnessing the fall of dollar domination and rise of the other currencies. Most of the perspective out there are all based on the currency system and its domination. While currencies played a lot of role in terms of the trade and economics, around the world, especially with the dollar dominating as a world currency, most of the wealth generation happened in the West, starting from the Western Europe and the North America, especially US and Canada. Uh, but as I said in the beginning, the most important factor is the who contributed to this wealth of the nations is the accounting practice of how asset is captured, right? What an asset and how asset is captured, correct? And so the with the current change in the world, with the new world order, with more currencies, there's going to be some disruption in terms of how the money flow happens and how trade happens with the money flow. But that's one thing. A lot of people, most of the people, are ignoring. The most important fact is the that contributed, and that's going to be a big disruption, is the value of the intellectual properties and the value of the assets, correct? How the assets are going to be accounted, captured, and accounted, and being traded, manipulated as a tradable equity or commodity or other class of assets moving forward, right? That's going to be the topic of focus in this podcast, right? So, do you know that last 100 plus years, the patent for the most of the intellectual properties uh, were held by the U.S., Japanese, or the um, uh, organizations and from the US or from Western Europe, US, Japan, and Western European countries. So obviously, the quantity of these assets are so high, and they dominate in the balance sheet of the organizations, and then eventually that gets into the balance sheet of the of the nation at large. The these countries enjoyed the benefit of these intellectual properties and their accounting practices, right? Huge volume. This other nations could not even get would get closer to the volume of such intellectual properties, patents, and copyrights and other things. So this is the most important, factor, a kind of a Cold War already happening between the nations in terms of the basically what we call it as an economic war, right? Is about really about the intellectual property. That's going to change um, the whole equation drastically. It's not about manufacturing. China is leading the manufacturing, or US losing out, or US want to bring back the chip market, blah blah blah. All these things are also the the factors that can tilt the economics of the region. But then the most important aspect of them all, which is unfortunately talked very less because most of the people won't understand it. Even the experts won't understand how the equation is, happening drastically under the carpet. That's the intellectual property moving forward, right? The So the quantity of assets was an unthinkable way. The enormous quantity of assets put a yeah, inequality between the nations at a very large scale, right? That has created a big moat for the nations where other nations could not even catch up, right? And then these accounting practices and the standards of these patents are all played in favor of the West, although there are now global patent initiatives are there, but then most of the nations around the world are still not able to capture the IPs properly, and even if they capture the IP, give the trademarks and the patents and the copyrights, they still struggle. These are the patents and the patent holders still struggle to capitalize on it because the game is not in favor of them, right? So when we talk about the quantity of the assets, we should not ignore the tradable value of the assets, because it's not just the quantity of the asset that makes the the balance sheet bigger of value, but the quality of the assets and the tradable value of the assets, right? So even if a emerging nation, is producing a lot of intellectual properties and letting the developing more institutions, organizations, encouraging the young entrepreneurs to come with a lot of intellectual properties and capture them in the form of patents and trademarks, you still are going to be having a trouble because the tradable value of those assets in the global market, which is again dominated by a handful of countries, is going to be a issue. So the tradable value is something which a lot of people ignore, and we are going to be touching that here. So the West mastered, the accounting practice and accounting. The West still is dominating in the form of accounting and banking and financial engineering, right? And that at a global scale, if you want to beat it and if you want to be part of it, it requires a lot of insight knowledge into to how to create the assets and how to value the assets and how to get the assets into the accounting practice, and then put it into the right class of assets. Again, every class of asset is different, and every asset is not tradable. the assets which that that can be liquidated. A lot of factors plays in terms of creating a tradable asset. Now, the major aspect I wanted to talk about here is the artificial intelligence and its domination and its influence in terms of transforming these assets manipulations, asset creations, right? Um, Something which is a topic many people can't address, and because it's the deep tech artificial intelligence has been um, very well in the last few decades. It is the usually the intellectual property is coming from the electronic and software world, where a piece of code or a programmable logic could create an intellectual property, right? And then the derivative of those properties gets additional patent and so on. And that is how the IPs were created. But with the development of, with the maturity of AI, and AI getting into this game of intellectual property, everything changes drastically, because unlike most people perceive, AI is not a programmable logic. It is based on mathematical algorithm. It is based on physics derivative. It's based on mathematical model. Uh, Having said that, it just opens up a Pandora box of unlimited possibilities of assets creation, um, in a multi dimensional way. I know I'm getting too technical, but I try to simplify it. Um, Artificial intelligence is not programmed, or it is not driven by you know fixed logic, right? It is driven by it is based on a logic, and it's based on an algorithm, but then it is also continuous. It learns, captures information, converts that into a intelligence, right? Continuously from the environment it learns from. Correct. What does it mean? What does it mean to intellectual properties? And its changes, right? So, for example, if you take a piece of algorithm, right? If you write a piece of code, software code, and put it into a system, and that is used in, say, in terms of capturing the value from a specific industry, and then you put a value to that software code based on the information, it can create and provide services and solutions to the world, right? But when it comes to same thing, if it can be done through the artificial intelligence system, um, it will go multi-step beyond just capturing the information. It will start creating more intelligence out of the data provided, with the by getting deeply into the networks. It can be done, that be implemented where in a way to go deeper into many multi-dimensional networks, and read not just the data from one dimension, but can read the data, manipulate the data based on many many parameters: the state, the sequence, the timestamp, and a lot of factors, right? So if you are putting a software code to analyze stocks of 1,000 companies, it there is only a limited output it can provide, manipulating the data or analyzing the data of and the potential of these values. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, it can go and read a lot more into it by if it is done right way, implemented right way, it can go deeper than that to analyze and provide a lot more insights of the asset itself, right? So Karma Capsule Network, which was designed by me, and is one such network that can analyze and create assets, intellectual property assets, based on many, at least 9 different factors. What I call it as a nominalism. The Karma Capsule network is based on the Aristotle's nominalism. Basically, you learn the intelligence from the environment that you play. So these intellectual properties will be created by not just by KCN kind of network, but any deep tech networks which is in pipeline now. Many such networks are gonna keep coming, and they are all can be fine-tuned to create intelligence. It's all about intelligence. Intelligence can lead to creating intellectual properties if it is done right way, the way Karma Capsule Network is designed. Every capsule, what I call, is an intelligence embedded in it, which can create more intelligence recursively by going into the network. So the value of the assets keep evolving with the network going deeper and deeper and learning from the environment. So what we are not moving forward, what we are going to be dealing is with not just a kind of a static IP that will be captured by some kind of an intelligence in a programming, but we are talking about every second manipulation and of intelligence and the new value of assets getting created by these AI deep networks, correct? So those intelligence can quickly become a tradable value. For example, the smart contracts, what you call the immutable contracts, electronic contract between the parties, that's going to be participating in trade in such networks moving forward in the internet. In the current world, internet is not designed that way. It is, the trade is based on some kind of fixed contracts, right, which can be manipulated and changed later. But when it comes to the smart contracts, it's going to be more intelligence will be embedded in these smart contracts, and those smart contracts themselves will be the producer of intellectual properties in real time. And those intellectual properties would be embedded inside these AI networks, deep tech AI networks. And now you imagine, while internet was common for the world, the application layer of internet was dominated by a handful of organizations around the world, and they could able to manipulate the whole thing because most of the value, the logic, and the capturing of the intellectual properties happened at the application layer level. With the Karma Capsule network kind of deep tech networks emerging, the intellectual properties are getting created at the network level and they have the ability to grow intelligence and have the and thus have the ability to increase the tradable value of those assets in a much dynamic way across the world, because these networks are underlying networks which can not be stopped if implemented correctly, can be stopped by one nation, right? It can tilt the whole thing across the region. Again, with a subdomain, you can try to make it work within the country, but then what I'm getting into is you just can't simply try to put a stop as with the current tools that the West has been using and dominating for such a long time, in terms of the accounting practices, in terms of blocking the or dominating, not blocking, but dominating the application layer level. It's just not going to work anymore, because the intelligence is not getting created at the top layer. Intelligence is really getting created at the network level, that to deep tech networks, and with a very limited not just very limited, almost impossible to penetrate, to do any kind of a manipulations, right? So what this is going to change the have an impact on the new world order. Very simple. While the currencies was a major focus of this new world order change, this intellectual property game, the currencies and assets, right? Two different class, correct? So currencies was used by the nations to basically tilt the asset equation, right, in favor of them, because with the dominating currency can buy the assets, right, or produce more assets. But then when the assets are getting decoupled from this fiat currencies, right, decoupled from the fiat currencies, and they have their own ability to survive, generate more trade, more tradable value, and then trade, increase the trade without having to, not without having to need, without the need for the specific currency, right? Currency doesn't work anymore as a medium for exchange of these values. I know it is hard to believe. You will start seeing more and more. The currency will become kind of irrelevant in the trading of values, trading of assets. While currency is in the focus right now, yes, it's going to be for some more time until the banking and system are going to, kind of holding the card to it. But then, if you know the basics of currency itself, right, it is a medium of by which the values can be exchanged. But then, with the artificial intelligence and the blockchain kind of technologies converging, you would not need any specific currency at all. The trade happens because the very basic thing for trade is the trust, correct, between two parties. When you are creating a trustless network, and the assets is captured not by a specific accounting practice dominated by the currency and banking system, you create the whole thing, the trade of capturing and trading of this intellectual property in a completely different fashion. That's what the new world order is going to make for the intellectual property. Intellectual property is going to create a new new world order, right? Extreme new world order, where the question is, who is going to dominate in that space? Is it China? Is it the US? Or is it the Western European countries? The, the very interesting thing is, with this AI driven IP, even the smallest nation in around the world, if they take a proper decision, if they deploy proper methodology, engage the proper people, and proper budgeting in terms of creating AI, they can dominate in this space, increasing their GDP to multifold, right? Because the way of calculating GDP until now will vanish very soon with AI getting into the game. Again, not all AI are the same AI. Many nations are going to get fooled. I believe US is going to, the way it is, US is not implementing it right. While China, what I believe, understood the game of deep tech, although they already dismissed the intellectual property game because they are the losers in that game, right? That's why they are not even in compliance with the global standards, any standards of intellectual property. Now, remember, when they are creating all their intellectual properties based on the deep tech, right? And their products and services are going to be traded around the world. Even the physical properties. And now, one specific thing I wanted to remind: it's just not about the IP, intellectual property, intangible intellectual property, but even the tangible properties, commodities and properties, can be captured as a value in the deep tax, right? And to put them into trade in the multi-dimensional way. All your copyrights and the old standards. Why do you need accounting when you don't? You need an accounting practices. At least you convince the world that, oh, I need to account it in this way in order to preserve the value or make a tradable value of a commodity or an assets and all. But all these things are essentially captured already by the AI, and it can, and with the kind of convergence network that you create for most of them are on autopilot. You don't need to capture these values and do the traditional accounting. So dominating through this traditional accounting practice and capturing the values and asset class and all is going to slowly, you're going to be the loser in the game when AI is being put into work. Proper AI, properly implemented AI. And this is a warning shot for the Western world. The way you are using the artificial intelligence, and claiming that we are very good in AI. Most of the use cases that I see is a joke. You are still, most of these use cases are very much playful, used for very primitive things. But the real challenge in terms of the deploying the asset game, and deploying the AI or developing AIs for the assets trading and capturing of values is going to be the bigger game, and that's going to completely tilt the world towards nations. Surprisingly, new nations, even tiny nation, can emerge as a world leader uh, in this. I know one can argue the military might can play in terms of not letting a small tiny nation to dominate in the world. But then imagine one of the top five military nations in the world is Singapore. which is a tiny nation, right? So if you have money, if you have the money power to buy military, you can get it done, from developed nations. So it's not about the size of your country, size of your economic zone. It is just how you are using the new emerging deep tech networks in terms of putting it into effect for your trade economics, right? Me being a geoeconomic strategist, I love this topic, and being creator of the Mayanomics framework and Karma Capsule Network as a deep tech network that I invented. I'm very passionate about this topic, and most of the topics are been very I deep dive into these topics, and will be very happy to share my knowledge, my experience and expertise in this field to you. Anybody who's interested in discussing further, you can reach me at maya.kannan at mayakannan.com and maya.kannan at sonicon.com. I don't differentiate, I don't discriminate between the nations or regions or organizations, small or big, as long as they understand and respect this, they needed yeah, help in proper help in terms of the geoeconomics with the AI, you know, combined to, as long as they understand the value of this thing, I will be happy to assess their needs and help them out. So feel free to call me and look forward for more of such videos. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.